Parents for Public Schools was established in 1991 as a response to the challenge faced by public schools in the state of Mississippi.
When I started working on Parents for Public School, enrollment, especially in the white community, had fallen dramatically.
The parents who formed PPS were concerned about the flight from public schools and sought to create an organization that would encourage parents not only to remain in their public schools, but also return to the public school setting.
In the late 80s, early 90s, Mississippi had been through about 20 years or so of desegregation, and we were beginning to see the resegregation beginning of public schools, and knew that that was not going to be healthy.
During this decade, PPS established its first board of directors and its logo, which still remains, and was designed by Marie Owen.
We were doing promotional material that showed how good the public schools were. We were doing these promotional materials, and I realized that Parents for Public School didn't have a logo. I just did it.
Well, I joined Parents for Public Schools in about 1993, and what propelled me to join were the zealots that founded Parents for Public Schools, the Wieners and the Mompuses and the Skeltons and the Schimmels and the Harts. They were pretty persuasive about what was happening in Jackson, Mississippi. I had grown up here, but was living in Cincinnati. They were pretty compelling in terms of the kind of work that they were doing to recruit families to stay with the public schools and to help make public schools better.
It's hard to tell the story of PPS without including Dick Mulpus and the late Jane Beach of the National Office staff and treasured historian of the organization.
I joined the organization because my wife and I had a decision to make. One to this organization and one had to go to the PTA. She won the PTA. I won this. That's where I met Dick Mulpus. It was a wonderful collaboration because I listened to all the things he said. I was very impressed with the fact that he had an idea and a dream to put this organization together, and he did so with so many different, unusual, but dedicated individuals.
Dick is the godfather of this organization, and we have a lot of affection for his steadfast dedication to making PPS come about and giving it such a long life.
I served in Cincinnati in the Parents for Public Schools chapter there on the board, and then also I did a stint as the interim executive director. Coming into that role, and I've never sat in that seat before, and Jane was just so helpful. I miss her so much. She loved PPS, and we love Jane Beach. And I tell you, she left a huge gap, not just in the organization, but in our hearts, because she was always willing to help, always was a wealth of knowledge, just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person.
Parents for Public Schools forged into this next decade of work by creating its first non-Mississippi chapter and by hosting its first national conference.
For me to watch the grassroots growth of this whole organization, and then to go to national meetings and to see how broad it was and how people really did understand that the public schools were the basis of our communities.
During this time, parents were trained using the PLI curriculum and theory of change.
During those days, there was a national movement and greater appreciation and a lot of conversation around parent engagement in public schools, who had strong initiatives around engaging parents in public education. We had kind of the wind at our backs that helped propel the work that we were doing. It was those days where we created the Parent Academy, which was a model that we borrowed from a group that we had networked with in Kentucky, and it became a real anchor program of the organization that helped parents learn about how to be better partners in schools, to give them understanding about how to look at data and what kinds of things to look for in a good public school. And so it made them stronger advocates and better and more effective partners, I think.
The impact and reach of PPS further expanded over the last decade. During this time period, PPS created its own brand of parent training, officially known as the Parent Engagement Program.
A lot of our focus was on getting parents engaged, getting them to the table, understanding how to help their students, how to help their students individually, and to whatever degree we could, encouraging them to take leadership roles in their schools and their parent organizations.
Additionally, our chapters and national office led the charge in our pandemic response to the education crisis. We created surveys to assess the needs of families and provided resources that helped support parents during this time. At 30, Parents for Public Schools has chapters in states across the nation. PPS is proud of its past, humbled by the present, and more determined than ever to continue its fight for families, children, and our nation's public schools. We believe that stronger schools ensure stronger communities. We are Public School Proud.